All right, looking at example 8 here, another slightly more complicated diagram. Again, it's helpful to not only identify the angles, in this case 9 and 22, we also want to identify the transversal. So note the transversal there is S, that is the line that they are both touching. And now that transversal goes through more than two other lines. So when we start talking about what's going to be parallel, we need to pay attention to the angles as well. 9 and 12, those are alternate exterior angles, but they're alternate exterior angles for lines Q and R. So it's Q and R that are going to be parallel if we have angle 9 congruent to angle 22. So a bit more going on in this diagram for sure. Let's jump down and look at 8 and 13. 8 and 13 now have a different transversal. So now T is the transversal for those two lines. T is our transversal. 8 and 13 being supplementary tells us that lines P and Q are our parallel lines. Again, that's where we have our consecutive interior angles. And of course, I forgot to say the converse. The previous one is because of alternate exterior angles. And B down here, those are between our two lines, P and Q. So they are consecutive, same side of the transversal, interior angles there for P and Q. Let's look at 1 and 17. 1 and 17, 1 is up there, 17 is over here, so we're back to looking at S for our transversal, but now our lines change. 1 is part of that one there, line P, and 17 is touching line R. So now we're looking at different lines. They are parallel. We do get parallel lines by the corresponding angles converse, but the lines we're looking at are different. Now we're looking at lines P and R. That's what we can prove are parallel. What about 16 and 20? Moving all this stuff out of here. 16 and 20. Back to T as our transversal. Note that those are on opposite sides of the transversal. They're on opposite sides of the transversal, but between the lines, so they would be alternate interior. As far as which lines are they between? Q and R. So we can say Q and R are parallel. Looking at another supplementary example here, we've got 22 and 2. 22 and 2, back to the left transversal, back to S. Now we're looking at lines P and R. Well, 22 and 2 are consecutive. They're on the same side of the transversal, and they're on the outside of those two lines P and R. So P and R are parallel by the consecutive exterior angles converse. What about 10 and 13? 10 and 13. So now we are looking at Q as our transversal. 10 and 13 are consecutive, same side of the transversal, interior angles. Unfortunately, I need to move my highlighter down one. Unfortunately, congruence is not the converse for consecutive interior angles. For consecutive interior, what we want is supplementary. Notice consecutive exterior was the reason we used last time, but both consecutive pairs have that same supplementary that we're looking for. So we can't do anything with F. Knowing that those are congruent doesn't do anything for us. And if you look at the diagram, you can see that pretty clearly. S and T weren't drawn to look parallel at all. Not that we can say that from the diagram, but with this given information, 10 and 13 being congruent, there's just nothing we can do. What about 3 and 22? Now we're back to a happier case, 3 and 22. Note that on the left side there, that's our new transversal. This is one of those where it's helpful to draw in the box. Because we're talking about the lower right-hand corner in each box, those are corresponding angles. And corresponding angles converse tells us that if those corresponding angles are congruent, and they are, then we can say our lines are parallel. In this case, lines P and R. What about 5 and 15? 5 and 15. Let's get rid of some stuff here. So 5 is over here, and 15 down here. So now T is our transversal once again. 5 and 15 are on opposite sides of that transversal, and they are on the outside. They are on the outside of the lines we care about here, P and Q. So they are alternate exterior angles, and that converse does tell us that those angles are congruent. Then the lines are parallel. So we wind up with P and Q. Very last example here, 2 and 16. So there's angle 2, there's angle 16. This is going to be another case where even if we know those are supplementary, which they are, that's what they told us there in I, there's no relationship between them. They don't share any lines, so there is no transversal. Without a transversal, we can't use any of our new converses. So this wraps up example 8. This is a more complicated example. So if you still have questions, you're still fuzzy on them, you want to see an extra example, let me know. I can play around with this diagram and pick some other angle pairs for you. Just let me know what you need, because again, more complicated diagrams, more possibilities, more options. Otherwise, if you're feeling good about this, try the practice, double check your work against the answers on the slides, and I'll see you soon.